Today's movie takes the concept of less is more and goes the extra mile with it. Hello and welcome to Rotted Review of the Day, and today I am taking a look at the 2019 movie Char Man. This is a film that had no budget, didn't really have much of a script to speak of, had a fairly unoriginal idea, no effects whatsoever, and just not a whole lot there, and somehow actually managed to make something out of it. This is really proof that simplicity can work in delivering a narrative, but it also is proof that ultimately you need some substance to back it up. Although I really did like this movie, I did feel like the ending fell very, very flat. And to get into more detail than that, I'm going to have to get into the categories. As always, 4 different categories, each one worth up to 25 points for a total possible score of 100 points. The plot of this one followed the characters of Cameron, Eric, and Andy, two filmmakers and a crew member / actor that they hired on. And the concept of this movie is found footage format. And in this found footage, they are attempting to make a mockumentary, or at least a scary documentary about the Ojai vampire, which is a urban legend from the 1800s that had pretty much 2 bylines within the world of Ojai, California's history, and not a whole lot else to it. They're going around scouting locations and planning film shoots and arranging coffin deliveries and so on, so that they can make their own found footage movie where they stumble across these coffins and the Ojai vampire, and basically making their own Blair Witch project. And this found footage movie, the Char Man found footage movie, is their behind the scenes capturing of that filmmaking process. It's a little bit mirror staring into the mirror, somewhat original, somewhat not, but ultimately wasn't terribly fascinating on surface level at that point. It seemed a bit directionless. They seemed a bit directionless. They really didn't seem to know where they were going with this whole Ojai vampire deal. But in interviewing Kent Bridewell, character of Ojai historical significance, they find that the Ojai vampire is pretty much this vapid, it's like, well, I mean, you have these 3 sentences here. That means you have all the history that I know. But have you heard about all the other legends? And he starts going into the Charman legend, which is a Ojai legend about somebody that historically burned to death or watched somebody burn to death, and accounts differ and stories differ and so forth, but ultimately what it amounts to is you would be smelling burning flesh, and there's a bridge that you don't say particular words on, and you follow certain rules. It's kind of the Ojai resident boogeyman. And that piques their interest. They start to kind of drop the whole Ojai vampire and start putting some emphasis on the Charman mythos. And in doing so, and in slightly preceding events, they awaken the Charman. And they basically start to encounter these nightly events where ramping up of situations are happening. And the movie goes from there. And what I really felt like was the Ojai vampire thing was not, like I said, not very interesting, bit directionless. But once they started talking with Kent Bridewell, and once they started digging into the Charman mythos, and they started having these nightly encounters, that's when the movie really picked up for me. I'm not going to say that this was a roller coaster, 100-mile-per-hour thrill ride, but this was interesting, more interesting than I thought it would be, and certainly more interesting than I believed it would be from the beginning with the Ojai vampire stuff. I really, really liked the nightly encounters. I really liked the simplicity behind this. This had a lot of unnerving moments and scary moments, if you will. I wouldn't say that this movie was necessarily that scary. But even so, the moments that it did have was usually done with a camera cut or a different angle or somebody basically ducking into the bushes as quickly as they can off camera. There were really no practical effects to be had here, and I almost like that. I almost love the idea of the simplicity behind it. There's a part of me that wants to tip my hat towards that. The big issue that I took with this movie more than anything else was the ending, and I'm not going to spoil what it is. These reviews are spoiler-free, but what I will say is that a movie like this, the ending is everything. It has to encapsulate what this movie has been all about, and for me, it really fell flat. There were a lot of elements of the mythos and the story and what was happening with them, especially in regards to the townfolk of Ojai, California, that I feel like could have been all wrapped up in a tidy ending that just was never really fleshed out that well. The nature of a movie like this is really going to depend on how you feel once those end credits roll. And for me personally, although I enjoyed the movie, I did feel cheated by the time the end credits rolled, and it felt unsatisfying and hollow. So, all told, with everything that it was going through and the fact that I did like a good portion of it, I would say 2/3 of it, but the ending and so on in the beginning, honestly was just kind of bookended by vapishness, and all told, I gave it a 15 out of 25 for the plot. The intent, I gave a 14 out of 25. The moments that it did have that were creepy, I thought worked pretty well. Very simplistic storytelling devices. And again, once the Kent Bridewell character came on board, well, not on board, but at least got interviewed and introduced the Charman mythos, that's when the movie got rolling. So despite having no budget and despite having no real plot to speak of in terms of a fully fleshed out screenplay, I'm pretty sure that this had an outline and improv dialogue. But in spite of all these things that, this was no budget, this was no effort, this was minimal camera, this was all filmed on mobile devices. In spite of all of this, it actually managed to eke out a movie that for 2/3 of it grabbed my attention and had me attached to the screen. So I would say that, 14 out of 25 for the intent. I actually found myself liking this movie way more than I thought that I would. The acting, I gave an 11 out of 25. Again, a lot of improv, a lot of Ghost Adventures bro-ness to it, which not bad performances, but nothing really, I would say, standing tall in the world of acting with this one. The technical, I gave a 13 out of 25. Overall, some good effort here, and I'm not going to rag on it for the cheap tricks that it did, because honestly, they pulled them off fairly well. Do you grade somebody for not trying and succeeding at minimal effort, or do you grade somebody for giving a lot more a shot and having 50% of it fail? It's kind of a tough measure there. But ultimately, what I found was that the effort that they put in was successful, and it did service to the Charman mythos that they were trying to tell there. And so all told, with the technical and the camera cuts and the angles and the footage that they got, I would hate to see how much footage was raw that they actually managed to cut and trim down to. But what they actually printed for this film, I liked. So 13 out of 25, I would say right on line with average, but nothing that I would consider to be spectacular. So that gives us a total score of 53 out of 100 points. If you're in the mood for a no-budget found footage foray into a less is more kind of style of horror, there is a lot worse movies out there than Charman. And I honestly felt for a movie in this type, in this day and age, a score of 53 is remarkable. And I was pleasantly surprised that I really did enjoy this movie, even if I didn't really care too much for the ending, and it took a little while to get rolling. But that's my review of 2019's Charman. I thank you for joining me here today. It really does mean a lot to me. If you like these videos, please click like and subscribe. I'll see you tomorrow, and remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.